You stuck on the fence of which species of fescue that you're going to plant? Well, today I'm going to show you my experience with two top contenders, the Barenbrugs Wildfire and Artimus by Heritage. Now here's the fun part. Both these products are making heavy claims. Super fast seed germination, so you don't really have to do any of that fancy planting. Both products say they have fantastic color, they're drought tolerant and fungal resistant, and we're gonna get into it all right now. As you're into turf type tall fescue, or you're looking to get into turf type tall fescue because you like the benefits of it, I've got two species that turned out fantastic. Number one, these are clumping varieties of turf type tall fescue. On our left, we have a species called Artimus, and on our right, we have a species called Wildfire. Both of these I've been very satisfied with, but there's some distinct differences between the two. Let's get the price right out of the way. Artimus is coming in at $155 for a 50-pound bag, while Wildfire is coming in at $78 for a 25-pound bag. So as you can see, the prices are practically the same, which makes this comparison even better. Now, I'm gonna post links to both of these products in the description of these videos. This is not a paid nor sponsored link situation, but I would love to get your feedback in the comments below. Both of these products are considered A-list seeds. So what does that actually mean? Well, A-list, when I'm referring to the grass seed, means that the seed variety has been certified by the Alliance for Low Input Sustainable Turf, A-list, which is a non-for-profit organization that identifies and promotes high-quality grass varieties, which requires less water, fertilizer, and chemicals to maintain, essentially signifying a top-tier, environmentally friendly option for lawns. Let's get nerdy and dive right into the specifications. We'll start with Wildfire. Wildfire's Barenbrug product consists of three different species of fescue. We've got Bonfire, Xanadu, and Flame. Now, Wildfire is being marketed for quicker germination and establishment when seeding with great traffic tolerance. Now, the superior disease resistance against brown patch, Pythium Blight, gray leaf spot, pink snow mold. It's also got a finer texture with darker color that tolerates a lower height of cut. They're claiming that you can mow this at 1.5 inches on average, making it perfect for a finely manicured lawn, golf course, and even a sports field. Now, as far as Artimus goes, Artimus is a heritage product, consists of 4 species of fescue. We've got Dynamite GLS, Spider 2LS, Titanium GLS, and Avenger 3. Now, one thing that sets Artimus apart from other turf blends is Gravity PGS. It's a plant growth stimulator used on the seeds as a pre-treatment to boost growth and development for faster spread, higher density, and also greener color. And because it's developed with cultivars using lateral spread technology, which improves strand density under stress, Artimus is extremely resistant to drought, heat, traffic, and fungal disease such as gray leaf spot and brown patch. Now, we're going to go in detail about my experience using both of these varieties. I want to make sure that we had a fair fight going down, and so I'm going to tell you about my seeding process and how it all went down. I had a small area of my lawn that desperately needed a makeover. It was very lumpy and hilly. It was where I put a ton of extra dirt and extra organic leaves, and it was very overgrown with weeds. I decided to level it out. I installed a quick sprinkler system and planted the grass seed. Now, to make sure that the seed went down even, I put a line down the middle of the area. I used a Scott seed spreader, and I used the exact same amount of grass seed on both sides to make sure that we could do a direct comparison. Now, I laid out an equivalent of about 10 pounds of grass seed per 1,000 square feet of each product. Then I covered each side with a light layer of peat moss using my compost spreader. Now, my watering strategy is this. I chose an equivalent of about 12 minutes per day. I broke it down to about 2 minutes per cycle, 6 times per day. Now, 4 of those were between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Mathematically, this gave me about 1.5 inches of water per week, which is slightly above the normal watering for the time. My normal watering for that time of the year is about 1 inch to 1.2 inches per week. We're in late April, early May. Now, I'll tell you this, right off the bat, the grass came in blazing fast, just like it's been marketed on both sides. Within 2 weeks, I had 75% coverage with Artimus and 85% coverage with Wildfire. Now, considering I didn't do anything special, no chemical treatments, and 1 small amount of startup fertilizer, I was super impressed. The grass was so long that I had to cut it by week 3. Now, I'm not talking about 3 weeks after germination. I'm saying week 3 that I put the seed down. So within about 6 weeks of planting, most of the area of the Wildfire had coverage, coverage and about 85% of the Artimus had coverage. We fast forward 2 months later, both products had about 95% coverage. I was just blown away at how easy it was to seed this. So you do not have to do anything special with the seed. And these are my results. The grass is super green, super healthy, super thick. About the only thin spot I have is on the Wildfire side in this little section right here, and the Artimus side on this little section right here. And most of this was because of the sprinklers. And again, I want to make it very clear, I did not drop more seed. These are my results off of one seeding. What I'm going to end up doing is taking my scarifier over this, see if I can get it to naturally thicken up. Now, a lot of you guys want to know, is this a self-generating or self-repairing ryegrass? No, neither one of these species are. They're bunching or clumping type species. So they grow from one seed and they clump outward anywhere between 2 and 3 inches per bunch, which is why I didn't do any additional seeding, because I really wanted to see those capabilities. Over the past 60, 70 days, it's done fantastic. I couldn't be happier. And I was one of those that had a stigma that now never have a species of fescue. Now I'm kind of repenting a little bit. These species of fescue are actually pretty sweet, and given the root mass, the root density, the root length to them, they are pretty awesome. As far as color goes, the Artimus is slightly darker than the Wildfire, but it's not by much. And I do need to warn you guys at home, my area is notoriously low in nitrogen, iron, and also potassium. So this is a very conservative color that you're going to get. Over the last 3 months, I've fertilized it 1 time. And so dare say it's due for another feeding, so you can really pump the color out of this. There's a bit of a stigma out there that turf type tall fescue is the wider bladed grass that's not as inviting on the feet. Now I've got this area kind of growing freely so I could show you the blade density of how this Artimus is going to get. Now this area right here is about uncut for about 3 weeks. This area right here is the Wildfire that has also been uncut for about 3 weeks. Now you're going to notice on our right we have the Wildfire, our left we have the Artimus. These are not as thick as you would think that they're going to get. And I dare say this is about as big on both species as your Kentucky bluegrass is going to get. Now this patch of Artimus has been growing untouched for about 2 months now, and you can see she's a big daddy. And you can see it's a really, really thick, but I've seen Kentucky bluegrass do the same thing. This grass right here is about 3.5, 4 weeks old. Here's our Artimus, and here is our Wildfire. And legitimately, this is what's going to blow your mind. This right here is our Kentucky bluegrass. And you can see it is not wildly thicker than the other 2 species. As far as height of cut goes, I've been keeping this area right here between 2.5 inches and 3 inches. It's very, very thick. Now, if you come into this section right here, I've been keeping it down to 1 inch, and I cut it as soon as it hits about 1.5 inches. So I've been cutting about 3 days a week to keep it at that 1 inch marker. Now you can tell, we've got a little bit of a color differentiation that goes through here, but you have to understand the Artimus is natively darker than the Wildfire. Now, in order to test out the fungal issues, I decided to overwater the grass for about 5 weeks, and I ran one of those cycles during the day to boost up the relative humidity. I also kept the grass super long for about 3 weeks, and I experienced minimal issues with melting out disease and gray leaf spot, which my area we are hypersensitive to due to our lack of iron. I've got teeny tiny bits of melting out, but then right next door to it, the grass is completely fine. So here's the areas melting out, and I tested this because this strain is more resistant to melting out, right? And I would say if this was my ryegrass or if this was my bluegrass, the entire cut would be like this within a week had I done the same thing, and really it would just spread really, really quick. And one thing I want you to pay attention to is the lack of scalp damage. I just took this down. Some of these parts were 8 to 10 inches, and I really just took it down. On average, I'd say it's about 3 inches. So what does rooting look like? Let's check it out. Man, taking these plugs is a little bit easier said than done. So what it is, I took 2 samples as best as I possibly can. Problem I have is my clay is so dense, it wants to break off. So here we have the Wildfire. And what I want you to pay attention to is the thatch layer is minimized, right? 60 days old. We do have a healthy thatch layer between here and here, which is the root mass. And you can really just kind of see it in there, but it's very minimal. And the roots are kind of protruding all the way down. Now to measure those out over a 60-day period, period, we have about 4 3/4 root mass, but keep in mind, a lot of this got cut off. Here, I tried to take as much of the dirt off as possible. The bulk majority of the root mass is between here and here. Very, very thick. Now we come over to the Artimus side and you can see the bulk of the majority of the root mass is thinner than this side. It could be the way that we washed it out, but it's got a longer density of roots, and this is really where you're gonna see it. Thatch layer is thicker through the top coming down, and the roots have a higher density at the bottom than the wildfire. If I train the clay to have a sufficient amount of water at the bottom end, it could come in handy. But if you have sandy soil and it's just gonna wash through, a thicker root mass at the top and the bottom might actually be more beneficial, but comment below what you believe. Now I did notice that the overall blade density of wildfire is thinner and not as wide, which for me it's a positive. It made standing on the grass barefoot more pleasurable. Also wanted to mention that when it comes to density, meaning the blades of grass in one single area, I felt like the wildfire was denser over the Artimus. But overall, the blade thickness of Artimus is much wider than wildfire. Let's get into my favorite part of the video, is talking about the pluses and minuses, but I'm gonna move it just a little bit. I'm gonna act as if I'm the consumer. I gotta make a decision between the two because a lot of you guys are on the fence this way. Now, when it comes down to it, the Ginja, I prefer a lawn that's nice and manicured, right? Wildfire hits those markers. It's got a lower threshold for height of cut without losing the color, which means I can keep it at 1 inch all year round as long as I mow at least 2 to 3 times per week, no issues whatsoever. But if I'm the type of guy, I only want to mow once a week, I want to keep it at 3 inches, you have to consider Artimus on the side that it's got darker native color. So if you're the type of guy that's not going to be out there fertilizing once every 2 months, you might prefer the Artimus over the wildfire. The other thing to consider is blade density and how it feels on your feet. When it came down to it, wildfire has a thinner blade, not only thickness wise, but density wise, it's softer on your feet. And so for that reason, me and my kids are always on the line too. I give another point to the wildfire. When it came to germination, I got better germination out of the wildfire right out of the gates, but at the end of the day, with the lateral spread technology of the Artimus, it was a wash. There was no issues there whatsoever. Those are kind of the most important factors for me. If you feel like I missed anything, please hit me up down in the comments below. Now, if you live in an area that either gets a ton of rain, or if you live in an area that gets a ton of heat, or a little bit of both, spring, summer, fall, like my area, I felt like it did really well with the thresholds with disease control. Again, I didn't apply any sort of fungicide, no nothing. Now, when it came down to it, I felt like the color held a little bit better on Artimus, where I did get a little bit of fungal spread through the wildfire. Now, as far as fungal control, so if you live in a humid area, both of these types of grasses were absolutely fantastic. I did not apply any fungicide throughout the entire time that I was using these two grasses. So it makes for an overall area. So whether you live in California or the northern parts, or if you're living in parts of Florida that tolerate turf type tall fescue, you're gonna be very happy with these grass species. But let me know down in the comments below which one of these two would better suit you. Till next time, guys, it's the Pest and Lawn Ginja. We're slaying lawns.